Welcome to the Illicit podcast, where we turn science into sense. This is our 12th season of Illicit, and we're brought to you via the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, or JCOIN. I would like to celebrate a bit this season, for as we start season 12, we've reached 21,000 downloads and counting. Woohoo! Yeah, not because we're famous, certainly not, but because that means at least 21,000 times our listeners have learned something about overdose, opioids, opioid use disorder, medication-assisted treatment, and/or harm reduction. And that, my friends, warms my very grateful heart. Also, just a quick plug for a few other JCOIN features that you might not know about. Did you know you can get technical assistance for your organization from the experts at JCOIN for free? And did you know you can apply for small research grants to help fund innovative study ideas? Yep, through JCOIN. And did you know you can apply to be a JCOIN LEAP scholar or investigator to improve your own skills? Also through JCOIN. If you didn't know about these things, check out our website, jcoinctc.org, and learn about the many JCOIN offerings beyond ACEIT that may help you learn and grow in ways that improve lives. With that, I'm honored that you're with us. I'm Danielle Rudes, your host, and this is ACEIT. In this season 12 of the ACEIT podcast, we're talking about roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose. By that, I mean we're going to examine how people in different environments and roles prevent and or react to overdoses. Today, we're diving into a topic that might challenge your assumptions about harm reduction and the role of unexpected allies in the fight against overdose and drug-related harm. When you think of harm reduction, you might imagine healthcare providers, social workers, or community activists. But have you ever thought about the role of people who supply drugs? It's a controversial perspective because, as discussed by Betsos and colleagues 2021 and Cola and Strike 2020, illicit drug dealers are often portrayed as morally compromised and predatory. But recent research highlights how some drug suppliers are stepping up to protect their communities and reduce harm. Today, we're going to talk about illicit drug manufacturers and dealers' roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose. Illicit opioids cause far more deaths than prescription opioids. For instance, in 2019, prescription opioids caused roughly 15,000 deaths, while fentanyl caused roughly 40,000 deaths. That comes from an article by London 2021. So if we're going to talk about roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose, it is crucial that we consider the responsibilities and reactions of people who provide illicit drugs. Also, just as a point of clarification, in this episode, we're going to be talking a lot about drug testing. Drug testing is the process of analyzing a substance to determine its quality and identify any potentially harmful substances it may contain. Okay. I'm going to start out by providing a brief summary of each of the 4 articles that we'll be talking about today, and then we'll move into some overarching themes from this research. The first study, conducted by Bardwell and colleagues in 2019, analyzed interview data from 20 people who used drugs in Vancouver, Canada. Their analysis focused mainly on the relationships and formation of trust between drug buyers and drug sellers. The authors found that participants often had a high level of trust with the people who sold them drugs, and that the length of the relationship, drug supply consistencies, and communication impacted the level of trust that people had with their supplier. Because of this trust, participants did not believe drug checking to be a priority, but they did note some of the benefits of drug testing, such as it would help dealers know exactly how strong the drugs they are selling are. Moving to the second study. In 2020, Cola and Strike observed quote-unquote satellite site harm reduction programs in Toronto and interviewed 20 harm reduction service workers. To clarify, harm reduction programs like the satellite sites integrate people who sell drugs directly into service provision. So the interviews include people who sell drugs. From their observations and interviews, the authors found that people who sell drugs often try to protect their clients and the community by offering assistance on drug potency and refusing to sell drugs that they believe are too strong or are unsafe. Take this excerpt from their article as an example. The authors write, quote, "The following field note describes how Tommy, a SSW, who sells heroin, engages in a practice of care related to overdose prevention. Sonia pipes up and says, "Hey, Tommy, could I get a bit of that from you? I got $40. I'll take some of that good stuff that knocked you out. I can take it off your hands if you want." Tommy shakes his head and says, "No way. There's no way I'm selling that. It's too strong. Maybe it's cut with fentanyl, but it doesn't feel heavy like fentanyl. It had the smooth, gradual start like good junk, but it's really too strong. That could kill someone. I don't want to be responsible for that." Here, we see how Tommy protected Sonia from overdosing. The third article by Betsos and colleagues 2021 explores how people who sell drugs perceive drug testing technologies. The authors conducted participant observation and interviews with 26 people who sell drugs at harm reduction sites in Vancouver, Canada. Drug sellers tested their drugs for many reasons. Primarily, they cared about the safety of the buyer, and they saw drug testing as a way to reduce the likelihood of overdose. They also saw it as a tool for avoiding quote-unquote bunk or drugs contaminated with other unwanted substances. Some also noted that buyers were starting to request drug checks. They viewed drug testing as helpful in establishing their reputation as a good drug seller. The final article by Hedden, Clayton, and colleagues, 2024, interviewed 6 drug sellers who were trained through a harm reduction organization called the Never Alone Project in Indianapolis. This organization trains both people who use drugs and people who sell drugs. The curriculum is no joke. It's 6 weeks of weekly 6-hour sessions covering overdose prevention, safer drug use, legal rights, and infectious disease prevention. The authors organize their findings into 3 main themes. The first, the diverse ways in which participants promote and implement harm reduction strategies in their everyday lives. This part outlines how drug suppliers test drugs, use slowly, tells them to carry naloxone, and use the buddy system when using drugs to protect themselves and others. Others took it a step further, canvassing neighborhoods with informational cards and resources. The second theme in the article, how participants advocated for the adoption of harm reduction strategies within their wider social networks, talked about how sellers encouraged other sellers to test their drugs or dissuade people from buying from certain sellers who did not take harm reduction measures. The final theme in the article, participants' self-described moral and social motivators for harm reduction practice, described how people who sell drugs were motivated to start taking harm reduction measures seriously out of concern for the safety of their buyers and the community. Take James' story, for instance. After a buyer's overdose, James remarked, quote, "It blew my fucking mind, and it changed my life forever, and I vowed I would never let that happen to me again," unquote. So, after we've reviewed all this research, where does this leave us? These stories and studies challenge us to rethink harm reduction and the roles people can play in reducing overdose risks. Drug suppliers, often painted as villains, are emerging as allies in the fight against the overdose crisis. They're motivated by grief, responsibility, and a moral imperative to protect their buyers and communities. Primarily, they do this by testing the safety and quality of the drugs they are selling. As we navigate the complexities of the overdose crisis, it is clear that solutions won't come from a single source. It will take all of us, including those we might not expect, to create lasting change. I hope you learned something new from this episode. I'll catch you on the next episode, and we'll be covering emergency medical response and 911. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your network. Thank you for listening to the ACEDIT podcast. We love hearing from you. So if you have comments, topics to suggest, or some science you'd like us to cover in a future season, please write to me, Danielle Rudes, at Sam Houston State University. My email is drudes, D-R-U-D-E-S, at shsu.edu. And of course, thank you to the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, or JCOIN's, Coordination and Translation Center, funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, housed at George Mason University, where this podcast originated. Thank you to our fabulous scriptwriters and also my fantastic doctoral students, Bryce Kushmerek-McCune and Jalen Magana. And a huge and heartfelt thank you to the team at Flunky LLC for their wonderful production as always. Remember to check out our website, jcoinctc.org, for more cool JCoin features and opportunities. And tune in again soon for another episode of ACEDIT.